The world is upside down tonight. So I've said in the past, I think I got it wrong. The cosmos itself is upside down tonight. Listen to these words from theologian John Stott. The essence of sin is us substituting ourselves from God for God, while the essence of salvation is God substituting God's own self for us. We assert ourselves against God and put ourselves where only God deserves to be. God sacrifices God's own self for us and puts God's self where only we deserve to be. We claim prerogatives that belong to God alone, and God accepts penalties that belong to us alone. As we stand before the cross, we begin to gain a clear view both of God and of ourselves, especially in relation to each other. Instead of inflicting upon us the judgment we deserve, God in Christ endured it in our place. Now our proud hearts rebel against this reality. We cannot bear to acknowledge either the seriousness of our sin and guilt or our utter indebtedness to the cross. Surely, we say, there must be something we can do, or at least contribute, in order to make amends. If not, Stott continues, we give the impression we would rather suffer our own punishment than the humiliation of seeing God through Christ bear it in our place. But my sisters and brothers, this Kairos time, this holy place, this sacred community offers us no choice, no action, no contribution, nothing we can do. We are helpless to stop God from coming to us in love, helpless to prevent the death of God except going forward, helpless, it seems, to stop ourselves from behaving in a way that makes this divine self-sacrifice necessary. Let me ask you, have you done anything this past week or this past month to make forgiveness necessary? How far back do we need to go to find that point in our own lives in which we need to stand beneath the cross of Jesus and beg for mercy, forgiveness, and relief? A day? A week? An hour? And I think that's what's so hard to bear about this day. It's our helplessness, our indebtedness, as Stott says, our embarrassment even. I sometimes think that that's why the powers that were at the time of Jesus had to get him out of the way permanently. Because he embarrassed them. They couldn't stand the fact that he revealed to them and others their true selves, their broken selves, their needy selves. He held up the mirror to them and they didn't like what they saw. They rightly felt shame. So you can either change the reflection or break the mirror. I also wonder if, from a human point of view, that isn't why Jesus was so popular among the marginalized and the oppressed. They had no illusions about their self-worth. The world told them over again and again what it was. That is nothing. So when Jesus comes to them, they already know their need. They already feel the emptiness, and being aware of their helplessness, there was nothing for them to do but receive or turn away. So, what motivates us to tell, to hear, to be open to, an assumption on my part, this story, this truth again, year in, year out? Or put another way, what brings you here tonight? some possibilities. Morbid curiosity? But we already know how this story turns out. There are no surprises here, except for the fact, devastatingly demonstrated on the cross, that God can and actually does die. That truth of this day always blows my mind. And it's voluntary. Well, maybe it's fond remembrance. Well, there's not much to be fond of here, sisters and brothers. It's a crucifixion, after all, one of the most horrific methods of capital punishment that the human mind has ever devised. Aren't we clever? Maybe what brings you and me here tonight is just habit. It's Good Friday. We go to church on Good Friday. But tonight it feels kind of like crowds that attended a public hanging or a lynching. Habit. Not the kind of habit you want to develop, I don't think, in your life. So what, then? What brings you here tonight? What motivates you to be in this place? Could it be the very thing we cannot bear to admit? Could it be that very awareness of our deep need? Of our helplessness? Of the embarrassment of how far short we fall of the image of God within us? Could it be our shame and not living up to that image? And could it also be God's surprising meeting of that need in such a powerful, moving, compassionate, loving way? In other words, do we come to this night because we have looked in the mirror and we have not been pleased? Because we know we're guilty and we long for forgiveness. And we find it. There's the miracle. And despite our pride and self-sufficiency and need to be in control, here we are anyway. Why? Because there's no place else to go. This is where we find what we need, even before we know we need it. In the grace of God. This is where healing is found, even when we hate to admit that we're sick. This is where forgiveness is made powerfully real, even when we kick and scream in resistance to our need for it. This is where the debt is paid, even as we deny we owe anyone anything, least of all God maybe, who's supposed to be merciful. So where's the shortcoming on my part? But God is merciful at great cost. And here is where we find our true worth. And that's what I love so much about John's telling of the passion that we heard tonight. It's so powerful. Jesus is so powerful. This passion is no sad victimization of a naive dreamer. This is God in Christ. Fully present, fully aware, and fully determined to save us despite ourselves and our protest that we need no saving. Thank you very much. This is God being God for us. The Christmas promise, Emmanuel, God with us, never more true than on this day, at this place, among this community. And given that reality from Jesus' generation to our own, we have two choices, or so it seems to me. When confronted with this extravagant, prodigal, loving God, we can either turn away in shame or indignation or resentment, or turn and face the cross. Face our need, our common human need, and find forgiveness and hope. And a new beginning. And then, take up our own cross of love and compassion and bear that cross, that Christ, that goodness of grace into the world so that God need not die again in any of our sisters and brothers, as much as that is in our power. It takes great courage, great faith to face the cross, to hear the story, to own this truth about ourselves and about God. And here we are. Thanks be to God. Amen.